Hi folks, welcome to RJA Impact. Today we're going to be talking about week 4 in the Holmes Theranos trial. You can search this channel for previous week's updates, and also there's a more detailed video on the background to Theranos and Holmes' journey to the point at which this trial commenced. I've had a couple of requests to tone the background music down to make the narrative a little bit clearer, which I've done in this video, and I hope this works and makes the voiceover easier to hear. Let me know what you think. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel, and also hit the notification button so that you don't miss out on any future videos. As a reminder, Elizabeth Holmes is in court accused of multiple instances of fraud against patients and investors in connection with her role as CEO of Theranos, and this is week 4 of that trial.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Apologies up front for the length of this video. It's been a very busy week in the trial, and we have had the most senior technical official in the company testify, so a very key prosecution witness. For those of you who just want the week in a nutshell summary, I'll post the timestamp below so you can skip ahead. Before I get to this week's witnesses and the things going on in court, I thought I'd use the upfront section of this video to provide some additional background that is relevant as I research the case and get into detail. I'll call it background bonus. Well, just because. Background bonus. This week's section is about the Theranos database. So apparently this has gone missing or has been lost since the company filed for liquidation. We don't know how much investigation has been done to try and locate it, or what the prosecution has done to interview potential witnesses about its disappearance. So the how and why it went missing is a mystery to me, and whether this would have helped or hindered the defence is also not clear. It does seem very odd that this has happened given the amount of materials, emails, etc. that the prosecution has been able to get from the company's archives. Also of note is that we know the trial was originally going to be joint with both Holmes and Balwani, but was separated because of Holmes' mental health defence based on their abusive relationship. Last year at some point the prosecution actually thought that Holmes wasn't going to raise this defence, and instead, per the prosecution, has instead committed to a defence of factual innocence. In other words, what I said was true, there was no fraud. Holmes has said that being in the same room as Balwani could be an emotional and psychological trigger. Prosecution have pointed out that both Holmes and Balwani have appeared in court together at least 11 times up to 2020, and again in quotes have said, at none of these hearings did Holmes exhibit any perceivable psychological distress. We know now though that the defence is raising the abusive relationship as part of their defence, and we've actually found out that the defence will raise not just psychological but physical abuse as well. And finally in this section we heard that one of the alternate jurors may need to leave as they've found themselves a job, and the judge has asked them to see if their employer would hold the job offer, which they've agreed to do. If they leave, then the number of alternate jurors will then be down to 3. And so to this week's witnesses. Adam Rosendorf, Theranos Lab Director. On Friday we'd heard from Dr. Rosendorf, who'd said that he felt pressured by the company to provide explanations for testing failures to external physicians that did not point to the Theranos testing devices. He'd left the company after 18 months and made the comment on Friday, "I came to believe the company cared more about PR and fundraising than patient care." This week Rosendorf continued to be questioned, and we heard more about that pressure. Rosendorf at one point told the court that he'd actually told physicians that he didn't trust the Theranos results. We heard about another test done for a patient by the company, testing calcium levels in this case, which the company's tests indicated a medical condition called hypercalcemia. When the tests were repeated at another lab, they came back as normal. And we'd heard about the hormone tests that failed last week. This week we heard more about that particular test, and that test was often wrong. We heard that Rosendorf gave the company a directive to stop the hormone tests, but the company continued to undertake the tests and took Rosendorf off the chain of emails on that matter. "This was the first time I've seen those emails," said Rosendorf. This would appear to be a very significant item in the trial. The who, why and when of that decision to leave him out of the email chains is not clear at this point in time. We also heard about another patient who was being guided by Theranos tests to adjust the amount of blood thinners to take. As you might expect by now, internal emails pointed to concerns over the stability of those tests, leading Rosendorf to testify that every time this happened, it raised serious and grave concerns about the accuracy of the testing process. He was asked why he sent some work emails to his personal Gmail account in the lead up to his leaving the company, and he said he'd considered filing a whistleblower lawsuit due to his concerns and protect himself in case of an investigation or probe. We also heard that after leaving, he spoke to the Wall Street Journal reporter John Carreyrou as he felt ethically obliged to alert the public. Yet another test, this time relating to cholesterol, which, yes, you've guessed it, had problems led up to his leaving the company. When asked by Christian Holmes, yes, that's Elizabeth's brother, to provide a crafted explanation for the results to the doctor, he said, "I'm going to pass on this one." And later, "If you're asking me to defend these values, then the answer is no." On the same day, he emailed Holmes and Balwani asking for his name to be removed from the lab license, which would limit his exposure to the company's problems. We also saw an email where he said to Holmes he thought Balwani should apologise to him. We'd love to have been a fly on the wall during the altercation that caused him to send that email. Balwani sent to Holmes, "We need to respond to him now and cut him Monday." It appears that Rosendorf left the company just a day or two before he would have been fired. Rosendorf said he refused to shake Balwani's hand when it was offered him as he left the company. It was the defence attorney next who took its turn to question Rosendorf, and they pushed him hard on whether his answers were scripted following coaching by the government. "I was always instructed to be truthful and tell the truth," Dr. Rosendorf responded, and said the same when he was asked a second time. Interestingly, Lance Wade for the defence often raised his voice during this particular line of questioning. The defence also brought up a series of blood tests that, over a period of a year, that Rosendorf had signed off as being acceptable to be offered to patients. Wade asked Rosendorf if he would have continued to sign off the validation reports if he, in quotes, thought that the Edison device was inherently unreliable. "I would not," was the simple response. At one point, Wade put to Rosendorf that his job was to raise quality control issues, and that's why he was paid the big bucks. "Not as big bucks as you get paid," Rosendorf responded, which caused the courtroom to laugh out loud. Rosendorf actually said he should have been paid much more money given the issues in the company, and the judge told the jurors to ignore that comment. There was a section of the defence questioning that related to an audit undertaken by regulators in 2013, and there was an internal discussion in Theranos, which Holmes was party to, about how to lead the auditors around their premises so that they could avoid seeing the lab with the Theranos equipment in it. "Is it your testimony that you actively concealed that lab from them?" asked Wade for the defence. No, was the simple answer. Very interestingly, while Rosendorf has been testifying this week, we had some tweets from John Carreyrou. He's the Wall Street Journal journalist who broke the story about Theranos practices and wrote the book called Bad Blood about the saga. He tweeted, "So, I've been fielding queries from reporters asking me to confirm that former Theranos lab director Adam Rosendorf, who is currently testifying at Holmes' trial, was my source. I can now confirm it. Alan Beam is Alan Rosendorf. Adam was my first and most important source. Without him, I wouldn't have been able to break the Theranos story. Hats off to his courage and integrity. He's one of the real heroes in this story." Victoria Sung. On Wednesday, we heard from Victoria, who is a scientist and worked at a biopharmaceutical company, Celgene Corp, that partnered with Theranos to help with the drug trial. This was back in 2009, so 3 or 4 years before the Wall Street Journal's articles started to question Theranos practices. She testified that Theranos technology was giving out of the range, not viable, or other results that differed from a standard result. In 2012, she told Holmes and other Theranos employees that they were discontinuing the partnership until Theranos had their next generation device ready. Interestingly here, we know that Holmes told investors that their technology had been validated by pharmaceutical companies. Clearly in this case there was no validation. We're not sure whether there were any other validations that could be identified and what that might actually mean if Holmes was misleading investors on this particular point. The text message saga continued. In some of the texts released by the prosecution, and in a continuing effort to show who knew what and when, we've seen more of the text messages sent between Holmes and Balwani. Some interesting ones we've picked out include Balwani to Holmes. Normandy Lab is a fucking disaster zone in November 2014. Now the Normandy Lab was the one where the Theranos owned devices were being kept. Balwani, it appears, blamed the lab workers and not the technology. Balwani to Holmes, we built software to remove human error and human judgment. All day I saw these people use their judgments to work around processes. Holmes to Balwani, this is where our problems are, which means we can fix it, thank God. Holmes to Balwani, we'll get them. This was in 2015 after a lab gave the company a bad review. Alan Rosendorf. On Friday the questioning of Rosendorf continued. He's been in the witness stand for days now and the defence has indicated his questioning is going to continue into next week. The guy is clearly going to face increasing pressure as the days drift by. There was a lot of technical jargon in some of the questioning, but a lot of it boiled down to Rosendorf being concerned about the test results from Theranos labs, where the labs didn't follow procedures that Rosendorf himself had signed off on. His response was that yes, the procedures weren't followed, but that some of the results obtained were still viable enough for him to have concerns. Balwani had asked Rosendorf in 2014 to put together a PowerPoint presentation on the unique testing method used to verify the accuracy of Theranos devices. The presentation he put together for staff made the point that Theranos methods were superior to standards as, in quotes, Theranos tests have no peer groups. The defence in detail went through the emails with Rosendorf and senior managers that showed Rosendorf had had plenty of opportunity to raise concerns he'd had and that they were taken seriously. In one email exchange with Balwani we have the following. Balwani, despite all of our best efforts there will be results that are unexpected. Mr. Wade then asked Rosendorf, no lab is perfect. Yes, was the simple response. He was asked if anything was limiting his ability to discuss concerns he may have had. No, was the simple response. Rosendorf sent an email summarising his conversation with the doctor about a lab result they'd been concerned about. He ended the email by saying, in quotes, the MD is extremely positive and excited about Theranos and wants us to crush Quest Diagnostics. Clearly here the defence are demonstrating that quality issues in the company had been, at least to some extent, addressed seriously by senior management. They appear to be having some success in this line of argument. At one point, defence attorney Lance Wade held up the Steve Jobs biography book to talk about how Jobs operated as CEO of Apple. Mr. Jobs spent a lot of time on marketing and advertising, Wade said, while cross-examining Rosendorf. Jobs held intense secrecy around new products as they were being developed, Wade said. This is interesting because people have claimed that Holmes was emulating Jobs' style even down to the clothes that she wore. For example, the polo neck she's always seen wearing. How they're going to expand on this comparison as part of their argument remains to be seen at this point. Week 4 in a nutshell. As usual, we'll try to condense the whole week down to the bare essentials. Adam Rosendorf. Questioned by the defence about times that specific tests went wrong. Rosendorf's point was that these were examples supporting his decision to leave. He said that the company cared more about PR and profits than patient care. The defence pointed to counter-evidence where the company had actually supported him. He himself had had email exchanges on tests where his own protocols weren't followed. And there were emails that he'd sent which actually demonstrate high levels of enthusiasm about the company. Victoria Sung. Victoria was an external scientist who had had concerns about Theranos testing results, and she ended the company's or her company's partnership with Theranos due to those concerns. The text message saga. We saw emails between Holmes and Balawani, clearly where they both discuss issues within the company, and one email between them is clearly damning about the lab where the Theranos owned devices were being operated. Fucking disaster zone was one example from amongst the expletive-ridden texts. So please don't forget these are still prosecution witnesses at the moment, and well, that's week 4 in a nutshell. I had a request to provide a summary of the indictment against Holmes based on the prosecution's own court submissions. I did give a brief overview of the prosecution's opening argument in the week 1 trial video, but if you want a separate short video on this specifically, let me know and I'll be happy to put something together and upload the same. Well, thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the notification button so you don't miss any future videos when they are published.